Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Companies to watch.
There we go. It's companies to watch. And as always, we've got Dan Koh to help us along.
That's right. Happy Friday, Ryan. We've finally made it to the end of the week. And welcome to Companies to Watch, a segment where we spotlight and stock you up with ideas of listed companies that may call for your attention. So we're going to look to market trends and risks that might be overlooked. And I want you to stick around as we explore for hidden gems and warning signs to steer clear of. So send us a text, 8855-0893, and tell us what you think, whether a stock or a company is going to be a hot or not. Shall we begin, Ryan?
Yes, let's go. And I think this is something that we've been talking about quite a lot.
Yes, we have. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I don't understand a single thing I've been reading, but I tried. Okay, so it's no doubt that the AI frenzy has been driving markets higher in the past few years. But that aside, Ryan, did you know that there are 3 particular companies that crushed the returns of the hottest artificial intelligence stocks last year? And they're all linked to a single common denominator.
Okay, what are we talking about?
We're talking about quantum computing. It's hard to ignore that. It's making headlines all over the news.
All right, I've got to ask you, Dan,
Yeah.
what is quantum computing?
I was going to ask you the question, right? Because it's hard to phrase it in my own words. But, okay, you know what? I'm going to use the help of Oxford Dictionary. Now, quantum computing is basically uses, the quantum states of subatomic particles to store information.
Okay, I'm going to use my geek brain here to try to unpack that. So normally in computing or computer, it deals with ones and zeros, binary codes.
Exactly.
But in quantum computing, it goes in multiple dimensions and directions. It's not just left and right or one and zeros. There are many various permutations that it calculates in, which makes it faster and more efficient. That's why there is so much interest in quantum computing. So the calculations that might take years before will now take seconds.
This is why we need you on the show,
right?
Exactly why. So simpler terms for those out there, it is basically supposed to help you to process things and problems faster than on classical computers. So if you do a quick review of the biggest market movers last year, shares of Rigetti and D-Wave both rallied about 1,449% and 854% respectively.
It's pretty crazy.
That's insane numbers. And, in 2024, that comes as, investors rallied behind the technology or AI, like, from the likes of Nvidia, because they're assuming that this will be the next big thing, quantum computing. So, with that, though, what exactly is driving this interest? Now, if you remember, we talked a little bit about this before when Google introduced their new invention called Willow, the new chip that could solve in 5 minutes a computing problem that would take a classical computer more than the history of the universe. Can you imagine what kind of use case that would be for quantum computing?
Yeah, I don't think we've come up with a problem that needs that much computing power yet. But yes, definitely a lot of exciting prospects of what this can do.
That's right. But unfortunately, 2025 has been a relatively different story for quantum computing because these stocks that I've mentioned earlier have collapsed in the first few days of this year. And just to give you an idea of how bad it went, the stocks tied to quantum computing like Rigetti Computing, IonQ, and D-Wave Quantum, all of them sank more than 40%. Well, that's because Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang has stepped up to declare that useful quantum computers are many years away. So he said that if you said 15 years for very useful quantum computers, that might be a relatively early side. If you said 30, it's probably going to be on the late side. So he is expecting maybe about 20 to be a relatively probable case of quantum computing use.
Yeah, it's tough to look in the crystal ball, right? Like, what is the time frame? But I think in the past year, there has been so much hype around it.
That's right.
To some extent, it would have to come down at some point, right?
Yeah, not everyone is an expert on quantum computing, and there remains a lot of realms unexplored. So even we've got CEO Mark Zuckerberg stepping up to say that, the use cases for these computers with these capabilities remain years away. And he admitted that his understanding of the quantum computing is still quite lacking, and the uses for computers with these capabilities still is quite far off as a useful paradigm for now. But the question remains, is there any investment case for quantum computing? What do
I'm
you think?
guessing, right, if you need quantum computers or anything of that sort,
Yeah.
you need computers, servers, chips, and so on. So the familiar names in that space?
Yes, that's a yes and no. But I would rest my case on the fact that quantum computing is sort of like an early stage of technology that has, while people have been working on for decades, it's still a tough one to crack. It's a little bit like, I guess, early 2000s, when we're still trying to figure out what a computer is all about and what it can do. So at least as of now, analysts are saying that it can certainly pay to listen to Huang. And it is his top priority at Nvidia to figure out what the future of computing will be. So it is clear that from his comments, he is relatively bullish on the potential returns of quantum computing. I mean, he works with a lot of these companies that I've mentioned before, but he believes that it will take a long time before these products eventually reach true commercialization.
Okay.
So as of now, it is still a promise.
All right, depending on your investment horizon.
Exactly. It really depends on how far or how far you can look, basically. So these quantum computing companies generate minimal amounts of revenue as well. That's one to keep in mind. They combined to less than about $50 million over the last 12 months. So it's unclear when they would start to be a little bit more profitable for investors. So at least as of now, given that these quantum computing stocks such as, IonQ, Quantum Computing, and Rigetti, they have wildly inflated valuations compared to the financial figures. I guess you need to rethink this idea. As a long-term investor, would this be worthwhile? And for heavy risk takers, you got to ask yourself, how much of a risk are you willing to take? How much are you willing to take your chances as well? So, at least for me, the verdict for today would be a not.
Okay, interesting, because I remember back in the day, people were saying, will we get money back from investing in AI? Well,
yeah.
Similar story, I think.
Exactly. It's a relatively similar story we're seeing here. But for the rest of TipRank's, Yahoo, and Barron's rating, it's a relatively buy rating for most of them. But that would pretty much do it for today's topic of quantum computing. Now, Ryan, before I let you go, here's a fun fact about quantum computing. How cold do you think a quantum computing needs to run on?
Definitely colder than a freezer. So I'm going with like minus 20.
Close to absolute zero. That's negative 273 degrees Celsius. And that's all we have for Quantum Computing's on Companies to Watch.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance.